Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and today I'm actually delighted to have as my guest Dr. Ted Barnett. Dr. Barnett is a medical physician, board certified in lifestyle medicine, as well as being board certified in diagnostic imaging and vascular and interventional radiology. Also a board founder and chair of the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. So Ted, welcome. It's good to see you. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world, championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
Thank you. It's so great to be here with you.
Yes, it's good. Yeah, so just to go back a little bit, I'm always curious and interested to learn about people's journey, their path to getting involved in this kind of plant-based world, because it's not something that most of us typically grow up in. So, there are things where we have aha moments and motivations that do that. And I notice in looking at your history, you are already a fairly well-established physician in practice by the time you got involved in plant-based living. And I know that you were inspired by some of the writings and work of Dr. Ornish. Talk a little bit about your evolution. I know you went through very sophisticated training, and we'll talk a little bit about what your specialty is, because I think people want to kind of get an idea of what it is that you actually do. And it's a very high tech kind of job. So, but talk a little bit about your path, your journey into embracing plant-based living in your own life.
Yeah, sure. So, I grew up very much in the outdoors. I grew up in Westport, Connecticut on Long Island Sound. Our house was about a mile from the ocean, but we spent a lot of time down there at the shore. We had a boat. So I would never do it now, but I grew up fishing and sailing. And I ended up teaching sailing at a camp in Montana when I became a camp counselor in my teens. And then I went off to Yale as an undergraduate and majored in biology there. Actually learned my specialty there was actually ornithology, so I was kind of a bird man. I did my senior research project on the relationships between various species of ground birds, and made some interesting discoveries actually based on what we call DNA hybridization, which that was 1975 and 76. And that was, it's called DNA hybridization, but it's nothing compared to DNA sequencing that we do nowadays. This was actually, you take DNA from two different species and you basically heat it up until the strands come apart. DNA is a double helix, right? So you take the DNA apart and then you actually radioactively label one of those. And then you put them back together from the two species. And the DNA finds its mate and forms a double helix again. And then you actually heat it up again and see the temperature at which it melts. And the higher the melting temperature, the more closely related the two species are, because it's a better match.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So my project was with ground birds, so chickens, pheasants, turkeys, and we made some interesting discoveries. Actually, it turns out that turkeys were in their own separate family, and chickens and pheasants were in the same family. But it turns out that actually turkeys belong in the same family with pheasants, and chickens are off on their own. So it was fun. Anyway, so then I went up to
So you were basically doing 23andMe for chickens, pheasants, and turkeys, basically, to find out their lineage and how they're connected.
That's pretty good. You're the first. Yeah, exactly. No one's ever pointed that out before, but thank you for doing that. That's great. Yeah. So then I applied to medical school. I went up to Tufts Medical School in Boston. Spent 4 years there. Did a 4-year residency in a 3-year residency in radiology, and then I spent a couple of years traveling around the world after I got my boards in radiology, and did what's called locum tenens. So I covered other people's practices, and I worked half time and traveled. At one point, I bought an around the world plane ticket, and was gone for 117 days, and safari in Africa, climbed in the Himalayas, hiking around
Wow.
Annapurna, and then I was in Tanzania, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and photography, safari. Really wonderful time. Then I settled down in my wife and I got married, and we settled down in Rochester, New York. And the rest is, well, then what happened?
What prompted your interest in imaging, Ted? I know that that's a big part of what you do. So
Sure.
what prompted that interest, and explain to people what interventional radiology actually is. I know you're doing vascular, so you're looking probably at DVTs, you're looking at all these kinds of things that people get.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so talk a little bit about that specialty, because it is very high tech and very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. So I actually grew up with photography. My father was a pathologist, and he was really interested in photography. So we had a lot of the yellow boxes around the house, the Kodak boxes, which is kind of funny. I ended up in Rochester, which is the home of Kodak. But I had my own dark room as a kid. When I was 11 years old, I built myself a dark room and was doing my own black and white developing and printing. And so I was kind of interested in for that reason. But actually, what happened in medical school, I always thought I wanted to go into internal medicine. But there was a woman at Tufts Medical School named Alice Ettinger. She was considered the grand old lady of radiology in Boston. She had fled the SS in Germany, where she was living, like in the late 30s, and she came to the United States with in her luggage. She had an advanced film changer that was made in Germany, and so it was this way for doing fluoroscopic filming. And anyway, so she ended up as the chief of radiology at Tufts New England Medical Center. And by the time I got there, she was kind of stepped down, and she was teaching medical students. So I did my medical school elective, either my third or fourth year. I can't remember exactly. And it must have been my fourth year. Anyway, we're sitting there in the dark one day. And this was before images were on TVs or monitors. They were just on slides. And we had, carousel projectors.
Right.
And she had all these interesting slides of interesting cases. And then it was an elective. So there were like 12 or 15 medical students in the room with her. And she'd put the slide up on the screen, and we'd have to talk about it. And one day she turned to me with her German accent, and it's in the dark. So she's this little tiny woman, but she had bright red lipstick on. And she turned to me and she goes, "You have a very good eye. You should become a radiologist." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." She passed me the torch. So that's how I ended up becoming a radiologist. I went up I stayed at Tufts to do my residency. I got really interested in the interventional aspect of it. Yeah. And
when you go to that step of interventional, tell people what that actually means.
So interventional radio. Diagnostic imaging, which is another term we use for radiology, because it isn't just X-rays; it's CAT scans and ultrasound.
Right, of course, all the imaging techniques.
Right. So we call it diagnostic imaging. But there's a lot of things you can do under fluoroscopic guidance or under some kind of real-time imaging. And there's two kinds of real-time imaging. There's real-time imaging with X-rays or fluoroscopy. There's also real-time imaging with ultrasound, where you're actually doing procedures while you're watching the monitor with the ultrasound images. But I basically got my start doing angiography, which is done under fluoroscopy. And so you're passing catheters up into people's arteries, usually from the groin. At least that's how we did it back then. You can, inject X-ray dye and get pictures, beautiful angiograms, beautiful pictures of the arteries. But you can also, once you're there with your catheter, you can actually do some repair work. So you can, if you find an arrow, you can inflate a balloon. You can put a stent in there and keep it open. There's lots of different things you can do.
So you do all of those aspects actually within the content. Oh, okay. I didn't realize you did all of that.
Yeah. So it's image guided procedures or minimally invasive surgery. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how you went from that to where you were discovering the work of people like Dr. Ornish and so on that drove you into that plant-based direction. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
The inspiration for that.
So I have to give my wife complete credit for this, because I grew up as a carnivore. Living on the ocean, I was all about seafood. We used to go fishing all the time. I loved lobsters and all clams. And but we got married in 1986, And within a year or two, she was, sort of talking about vegetarianism, and she got some mailings from PETA showing downed cows. And, and then I started learning about the environmental aspects of it. And I've been a member of the Sierra Club since I was 18 years old. And I thought, well, I'm an environmentalist. Is there a connection here? And it turns out there's a big connection. You use about 1/10 of the resources, much less polluting, much less greenhouse gas creation, when you switch from eating animals to eating plants. But then, of course, it sounded dangerous to me. I thought, well, this can't be right, because my parents are smart. They would not have raised me this way if it was, if it wasn't the right way to eat. So then I did a bunch of reading, and I, some original journal articles, some books, and, came across McDougall, came across Dean Ornish, and actually, Ornish, his book Reversing Heart Disease, is when I had my aha moment, when he talks about how hard it is to get funding for any kind of lifestyle medicine research, because there's no money in it for people, right? So I actually refer to that as my sloping forehead moment, because I went like this. So, but anyway,
so you said I better keep my day job while I do this, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So we I guess it was around 1989, 1990 where we started thinking about it. We had 2 little girls at the time. Nathaniel wasn't born until 1992. And we basically, probably around the end of 1990, we kind of made the decision. But to make it simple, we say it was January 1st, 1991, when we actually made the switch. So we've been doing it since 1991, which is 33 years now.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And we made the big switch. Our kids are still vegangelists. And I think and our son Nathaniel, who's now 31, I mean, they're all musical. He got a Grammy last year.
Wow.
for he's in a professional choir, and their last album received a Grammy. So he has 1/24 of a Grammy, I guess, because it's a big choir.
Well,
anyway,
it's still a major accomplishment. It's awesome, really. Seriously.
Yeah. So
I'm here with Dr. Ted Barnett. Let's just take a short break so we can hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the NHA Health Science Podcast. Dr. Frank Sabatino here, encouraging you to check out the NHA membership. For just $35 a year in the U.S. and $55 internationally, you'll have access to a wealth of resources, including our quarterly full-color print magazine, Health Science. Stay updated on the latest health tools, inspiring stories, and exclusive events like the NHA Conference and plant-exclusive cruises. Join us at healthscience.org/membership and make a difference in your life and the world. I'm Dr. Frank Sabatino, your host, and now back to the NHA Health Science Podcast, where more exciting insights await you. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm here with Dr. Ted Barnett, who's from the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, and we're talking about his evolution into plant-based living. And very soon after that, apparently you and your wife wound up becoming a focal point for that Rochester area vegan society. And apparently you're still connected with that all these years later, yes?
That's absolutely right. So my wife started going to the vegetarian, it was called the Vegetarian Society at the time, Rochester Area Vegetarian Society. It had the same acronym, RAVS, R-A-V-S.
Okay.
And now it's the Rochester Area Vegan Society. Although it's always been vegan, we had to help, the V word, as we call it, wasn't necessarily acceptable. But anyway, the RAVS was begun in 1989. So in 1995, the founders, Stan and Rhoda Sapone, asked us if we wanted to take over. And at that time, we thought it was an old organization. It was 6 years old at that point. And we've been running it ever since 1995. So it's coming up on 30 years that we've been running it, actually.
Now, I'm assuming your interest in, as you became more aware of the impact of plant-based eating and living on health and well-being, that was driving you obviously in the direction of lifestyle medicine, which you became one of the first people in that first group of docs that were actually board certified. I know that's part of where you were in that kind of first group of board certified lifestyle medicine docs. Where does that fit in with the evolution? Let's talk about your Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. How did that begin to evolve? What was the vision for that? And how did that play into what you do professionally?
Yeah, so the boards that you're mentioning in lifestyle medicine were given, the first time they were given was in 2017, and I took them then. There were 204 of us who got certified, including Michael Greger at that time, but we had already started the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute in 2015 for the purpose of running a program called CHIP, the Complete Health Improvement Program, which was started by Dr. Hans Deal, and
Right.
one of the primary movers and shakers in the lifestyle medicine space. So we had started that in 2015, and we were slowly developing. We teamed up with a woman named Dr. Susan Friedman, who's a geriatrician and professor of medicine at the University of Rochester Medical School. She's amazing. And actually, because of her, we continue to publish. We've published a fair number of scientific articles in the peer-reviewed journals based on our work, and it's because she loves to publish.
So this is data you collected at the Rochester Center at the Medicine
Yeah,
Institute?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's been mainly through our 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart, which we started in 2018,
Okay.
and we started giving that locally to 30 people, 24 to 30 people at a time. We did it in our medical office. We actually had a regular medical office at back then, before the pandemic, and we would bring people in on day one, which was a Saturday, do finger sticks, give them their lipid panel, find out what their cholesterol levels were, and their fasting blood sugars, and then they would be part of this program. There was a Facebook group, and they would get together the following Saturday and the following Saturday after that. On the third Saturday, by the way, the reason it's 15 days is because it begins and ends on the same day of the week. So which was Saturdays, right? So the third Saturday, which was day 15, we would do the finger sticks again. And these people had gone from being on a standard American diet to going on to basically the Esselstyn diet, which is a very low-fat, whole food plant-based diet, or VLF-WFPB. And we would get incredible results. I mean, we didn't know the first time we did it whether it was going to work. So it was a little bit of nail biting. But it turned out that we had remarkable results for people who went through the program. They cholesterol drops of on average of 44 points for people whose cholesterol is over 200. But we saw people drop cholesterol of 100 points in 2 weeks, sometimes 150 points in 2 weeks. Our record is about over 200. But I have a hard time counting that because that was somebody whose cholesterol was, I think, 400 or 500 when she started. So there are some people with really high cholesterol, so they have a long way to drop.
I know some of it is outrageous, truthfully.
Yeah. But that was the program, and we ended up publishing data from before the pandemic. And then in 2020, in March of 2020, we had to pivot because we couldn't bring these people into our office every month, because we had been doing it every month, bringing 24 to 30 people into the office for this, group right. session. And so we pivoted to Zoom. We had no idea whether it was going to work, but it worked. And now we're international. We've had, we continued to do it every month since 2020. And we've had over 2,400 people go through the program from 44 states and 9 countries. And we're still publishing.
Wow.
So,
yeah. I'm here with Dr. Ted Barnett. Ted, let people know how they can find you if they want to pursue learning more about you, your program. What's the location that they can find you?
Yeah, so we have a website, rochesterlifestylemedicine.org. If you go there, you can find out about our 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart, which is one of a handful of programs that's certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We also run what's called the LIFT Project, which is also certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We run individual and group coaching. We also have webinars 2 or 3 times every month. We have the Lifestyle as Medicine lectures. We've been doing that every month since 2016. Went from being in person to being on a webinar. We just started a new program, Lifestyle as Medicine for the Planet, which we refer to as LAMP. And we're doing that quarterly this year, but I'm guessing that's going to become every month next year. And also we run something that's unique, which is Lifestyle Medicine Grand Rounds, which is for medical professionals. And every month we present a challenging case to a panel of experts, including a guest panelist. And the presenter is usually a physician, either a resident or an attending physician from somewhere around the United States. And they have an interesting case. And they present it to our 3-person panel, including a guest panelist who might be Neil Barnard, might be Michael Greger, could be John McDougall, and We get a bunch of specialists who come and help us out, and people who attend that get a free CME credit. And we're building up a whole library of what I consider really valuable hour-long presentations where we really talk about the nuts and bolts of taking care of people with lifestyle medicine.
You also had, I saw that, I don't know if it's connected to that or it's separate from that, you had created some CME hours that was a plant-based nutrition course for physicians. Is that still in play?
Yep, that's still in play. So that's actually a descendant of a program that my wife and I began in 2012. We gave that, it was a 6-week program that met once a week, usually at one of the local hospitals. We gave it 20 times to almost 900 people in Rochester. About 15% of them took it for credit. They were physicians and other healthcare professionals. We turned that into, because of the pandemic, we stopped meeting in person, and we turned that into a self-paced course that's also online. That's for the CME one is called Foundations. It's called Jumpstarting Health Foundations. And then actually what's unique about our programs is that healthcare professionals can go through the 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart. And as part of that, they receive 10 CMEs for being a participant.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. And, because, well, it's a great way for doctors to learn about how we talk about plant-based nutrition.
Well, Ted, let me ask you a question, because in a way you wear a couple of hats, right? You've got your high-tech job, which is very busy, and that's, of course, incredible. How do you integrate your lifestyle medicine stuff with that interventional stuff, which is operating really kind of at an endpoint of something that's already developed, and you may have people that are in more emergency-like situations that may need a different kind of intervention. So talk a little bit about how you juggle those different practices and how you integrate them, if you can.
Yeah, sure. That's a really interesting question. Well, as you say, interventional radiology tends to be end stage when we're at least when we're fixing arteries and veins. I mean, sometimes we do other procedures, like we drain pus and we drain clogged gallbladders and things like that. But it tends to be in someone who's already sick or has been sick for a while and maybe hasn't been paying so great attention to their lifestyle. So some people are receptive at that point. A lot of people are not particularly receptive at that point. But you still, if the staff that all works with me, they know that this is what I'm all about. Every once in a while, you do run into a patient who is really interested. I mean, and I've been doing that, talking to patients about this really since the middle 90s. And the reception is much better now. People have heard of plant-based. They're much more likely to actually know what you're talking about and not throw you out of the room. So, and in the interest of full disclosure, interventional radiology is kind of it's a little bit physically challenging. So I'm going to be 70 years old this year. I've actually I work in a private office now. I don't work in a hospital. I actually don't do catheters and the procedures anymore. I do mammography and mostly in women's imaging. But I still get to do a lot of procedures because there's a lot of biopsies involved. So I'm using the ultrasound probe and I'm putting the needles in under ultrasound guidance. So there's still that. It's a little bit lower stakes game. But in that situation, I really do get a chance to talk to people about, I give them a card and talk to them about, if they want to try this program for 2 weeks. And that's another thing about the 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart is we can say, you're a grown-up. You can do anything for 2 weeks. Give it a try. What have you got to lose? Right? So I do kind of mix it in with my daily practice.
How often do you do the 15-day program now?
So we run it once or twice a month. And we've been doing it every month since 2020. January of this year is the first time we ran 2 cohorts at the same time. And we're doing 2 cohorts this month as well in March. We plan on 4 or 5 times a year doing 2 cohorts a month. And as it becomes, busier, we'll add that on permanently.
Aside from that, do you do any online consults too? Is that part of what you do, or you don't do that?
I don't do that anymore. For a while, I had a license, medical license in Michigan, and also I have one in New York as well. So there was a time back when we had the medical practice before the pandemic when I was doing some telemedicine consultations with people. I don't do that anymore. And there's really good companies out there that provide good, telehealth for lifestyle medicine. There's one called
Yeah.
love.life. Yeah. And we
Yeah,
actually send
and we've interviewed a number of those docs. It's a great
yeah.
it's a great program. Absolutely.
They're fantastic, and we refer people to them, and they refer people to us. So it's really nice.
Ted, let me ask you a question. When people go through this 15-day program, we know how important social interaction is, community sense. So I'm assuming that somehow in this program you develop that. You bring these people together. When they leave that 15-day program, are they part of a group? Is there a follow-up that they can now be part of, where you're collecting a number of people from each of these 15-day groups? Is there an ongoing community sense to the program?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's the big challenge, right? And anytime you have behavior changes, can people maintain the behavior that they've changed to? So we do have an alumni program. We're expanding that. And for the last few years, it meets once a month, and we usually get 50, 60 people who show up for that. But we're really expanding that in the next month or so. We've created a whole new platform. It's a community platform where it's actually called Pale Blue .community, because you know how you can have .com, .org.
Yeah.
Okay, it turns out you can have .community now. It's one of the new ones. And so it's Pale Blue .community, which actually refers to the pale blue dot, which I don't know if you remember Carl Sagan, but he was all about the pale blue dot, the little when Voyager 1 turned around and took a picture of Earth, and it was one little pixel that was blue. And so that's what it's based on. So that's where the name came from. So we've built that for our alumni, but we've also built it for doctors. So doctors who go to our lifestyle medicine grand rounds, they also can sign up to be part of the Pale Blue Dot community. And other organizations can hang their shingle there as well. We're working with Dr. Liana Leonoff, who's a former president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. She's kind of the mother of lifestyle medicine. And she has her own organization called the Global Positive Health Initiative, GPHI. And she's already got some spaces in there, and we'll be teaching courses on our platform. We've designed it to be kind of a Facebook replacement. And so there's no advertising, there's no algorithms, people, you're not being tracked. It costs $5 a month. So we basically said, look, in order to not have any advertising, we're going to make it a subscription. So for people who want to join, they can. It's called Pale Blue Dot Community. The dot is kind of a pun, right? Because it's spelled out in the name, but it's actually a period in the URL.
A couple of questions come to mind when you have someone going through an online program like that.
Right.
These people have their own primary care physicians who, unfortunately, in many cases are disease managers and may not be very sensitive or receptive to the kind of consultation, counseling, and information you're giving. Is there any feedback from your people that conflict becomes problematic for them when they go back under the care of the people that they typically see in person on a regular basis? Has there been any feedback to you about any conflict with that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, the good news is that almost half of the people who take our program have been referred by a physician.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so those patients are usually in pretty good shape.
Right.
But there are, when people sign up for our program, we always ask, is it okay if we contact your physician? And almost everybody says it's okay. Some people say they don't want their physician to know. I'm not sure why, but anyway, one of the big things that we hear is that doctors don't want to order blood lab tests 2 weeks apart, because they'd say, well, there's not going to be any difference. Why would we do that? So we say, look, this is how you got to teach your doctor. Just talk them into doing this. And we actually there's actually a letter they can print out that we give them, that they can give to their doctor, that explains to the physician, your patient is in this program, and we expect major changes in their laboratory results very quickly. So please get the test 2 weeks apart. And we're training doctors, and a lot of times patients will say, can you get me another doctor who's more receptive to this?
Right.
And for the most part, those doctors are filled. They are not taking new patients. And we basically say, look, this is your chance to teach your doctor, right?
Yeah.
That's what could be
Well,
better?
you know what? When you were talking about blood tests a couple of weeks apart, it's not only the docs, because you got to go through insurance companies that don't see medical necessity, and that always
Right,
becomes an issue in reimbursement. So there's always
right.
that. So you're kind of dancing around that in a sense too, which
We are.
makes it even a little more complicated for people.
No, you're absolutely right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how is the climate? Because I know you're connected to the Rochester, that vegan society.
Yeah.
How is that going on in terms of your own environment? How do you see the expansion in the community or the space of Rochester for the consciousness of this kind of change? How does that look?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. So, you're probably familiar with the magazine Veg News.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so they published an article a couple of years ago. The title of that is Rochester, New York, the best small city for vegans.
Uh,
And it was written by Jasmine Singer, who writes for Veg News. It was actually, interesting enough, has become one of the morning announcers on our local NPR station. So it's wonderful to have that connection. So in the article, she talks about how Rochester is kind of a hotbed for veganism, for lifestyle medicine. And she mentions my wife and I, Ted and Carol Barnett. And there's other doctors in the area that have jumped on board, like Susan Friedman and Carrie Graff. But there's these great vegan restaurants now. And so I would say Rochester, New York is kind of one of the hotbeds for lifestyle medicine. Other, kind of up there with Loma Linda, California, and maybe a few other areas but it's starting to take off all over the country. But I'm sort of proud to say that we've softened it up here.
I
Got
see.
the
But
rate.
I think it's great. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
As you talked earlier, as a research scientist myself, I'm very intrigued because you talked about collecting data and publishing, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming you're collecting data from your 15-day programs to some
Correct.
degree. Yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
how do you create the controls for that? Does it become just a pre and a post? Is that basically what you're recording, or is there some way that you exert adequate controls for people that are not with you? They're at a distance.
Sure.
How does that work to
Yeah.
create a verification of that data in a more positive way?
Yeah, so interesting. So, well, first of all, we collect the data and store it. We have a HIPAA agreement with Google, so our Google Drive is HIPAA compliant. So we're storing all the data
Okay.
safely. We don't. Well, we actually have one done. We've done one randomized control trial. We did it in conjunction with the nephrology department at the University of Rochester. We just completed that last year with one of the nephrologists who had a randomized group, and I think we had about 20 people in the control group and 20 people in the experimental group, roughly. And that was a controlled study where and truthfully, the bar was actually set quite low. There had never been a study demonstrating the safety of a plant-based diet in people
Right.
with chronic kidney disease. So we had people with stage 3 and 4 kidney disease go through our Jumpstart, and first of all, they all survived, which is really good, and they all got that. They all, on average, got better compared to the control groups who didn't.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because that's such an enigma when you talk about chronic kidney disease. So
Yeah,
you actually saw improvements in GFR. You saw filtration rates actually
yeah,
improve
yeah.
significantly.
Well, it was statistically significant, small amounts, but statistically significant.
Okay. So
And
you
yeah, and just to go back for a second, so that all of it, we've got these other studies that were not controlled. They're just the patients act as their own controls, right? When somebody's cholesterol drops 100 points in 2 weeks, that was not random, right?
Yeah, we know
It's not
that.
like, yeah, right. So, but going back to the CKD patients, yeah, it was pretty amazing. So we had that was turned into a poster at the last American College of Lifestyle Medicine, as a poster abstract that we presented it there, and it's out right now for publication at a peer-reviewed journal. I'm not sure which one at the moment. That's kind of in the other guy's hands. The nephrologist is taking care of that. But the article's been written, and we're just waiting to see if we can get it published.
Yeah, that's one of those real black box problems that people feel never can recover. So that's why I'm asking you. When you guys CKD, it's kind of like that filtration is what it is. We can keep
Right.
you kind of stable, but we're not going to really see improvements back into the normal range. As a rule, that's
Yeah.
the dialogue. So I find that interesting. It's intriguing to me that you see that kind of positive change. I love that.
We see improvement. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get someone back to normal, but
Right.
I mean, really, the real goal with CKD is stopping progression.
Yeah,
It's just
prevent dialysis is really the goal.
exactly who wants to go on dialysis,
basically, because then you
Yeah,
go from a patient that's spending about 10,000 a year to about 100,000 a year, which is just an
exactly.
ungodly cost that no one can afford. Truthfully,
That's right.
it's pretty
That's right.
outrageous. So let me ask you a
Yeah.
question: with everything you got going on, how does Dr. Ted take care of himself? What's the things that you
Ah,
do in lifestyle medicine to help you? What are you do sports? Do you do things on a regular basis to help you?
I do. Well, first of all, there's the six main pillars of lifestyle medicine. Sleep is one of them, right? I don't do very well with that. I'm working. That's the one I focus on. I have to work the hardest at. Is getting enough sleep at night. But I'm pretty good at exercising. So every morning, just about every morning, I get up and run a 5K.
Okay.
I run it, sometimes fast, usually reasonably fast. And I've been running 3 miles every morning or every day, at least for decades. But I realized that if I add 1/10 of a mile to my 3, I can make it into a 5K. So about 6 months ago, I said, I'm going to add that extra 10th. And so now it's a 5K every morning. So I do that. I love running. I get kind of cranky if I don't run. My wife will even tell me, I think you need to go for a run.
I'm
And
laughing because I'm the same way. I'm really irritable. I'm just a whole
yeah,
different person if I don't do my physical activity. So
exactly. And so I actually have this interesting rule. It's called, one of Barnett's laws is get out of breath every day.
right.
So, there are some days when you just can't run, right? The weather's too awful. So I'll be at work. There's a stairwell at where we work that's 5 floors, and I'll just go. I have a timer on my watch that goes off. It says go run the stairs twice a day. So I'll go and run the stairs for 10 minutes. Well, that's a pretty good workout.
That's a good workout. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So
I definitely
the short of it is you're taking care of yourself. That's good to hear. That's what I want
I
to
do
hear.
that. I think I eat pretty well. My wife feeds me well. I do, I can do 60 push-ups. I can do 20 pull-ups. So I do that on a pretty regular basis as well.
So Ted, in terms of your vision for what comes next, so you just want to do more and more of the same, or you have some bigger ideas, visions, and plans? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. We really want to move the needle on the healthcare system, and we've reached thousands of people, but that's not going to move the needle, right? What we need to do is reach millions of people. So we're doing that in 2 ways. One is we have reached a lot of physicians. So there's over 300 doctors around the country who have referred patients to us at least once. There's 10,000 members of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Most of them are pretty familiar with. I would say at least half of them are quite familiar with our work, just because our interactions with them. But then we did start this new platform, the One Pale Blue Dot community, and that's a place for us to really try to scale up both our Jumpstart and our alumni program, because the power is going to come from people telling other people. And right now we're basically dependent. Every month we have a new round of advertising, and the more we advertise, the more people sign up. That's the way it works, right? But wouldn't it be great if this month we have 30 people do it, those 30 people tell another 30 people, so right, plus we advertise and get 30, so that's 60 people next month. If you can keep that kind of thing going where you're actually doubling, or at least going up by a percentage, you can reach a lot of people if you have sort of compound interest. And one of the things we talked about from the pandemic is the R number, which is the number of people that get infected by every case. So if R is 1, it means every person infects one other person. If R is less than 1, every person affects less than one other person, and then the pandemic dies out. If R is 1.2 or R is 2, then the pandemic spreads because every person who has it infects more people. Well, I want to take the positive approach to that. We want an R factor of greater than 1 with plant-based nutrition. Why not? Just
Why not?
yeah, that would be the way, and that's how we're going to change it. So
Well, Ted, as we wind this down, do you have any final words you'd like to share with the audience out here?
Well, I want people to enjoy themselves. We live in challenging times. I think because of this year's election, there's going to be a lot of people angry and upset just generally, and it's going to be difficult for people to get along with each other and to get along with their relatives and their, their friends. And so we need to come up with a way to really, be patient with each other, to be forgiving, to be grateful for what we have. I know it's not easy, but, you only get to live once. And, I think we need to really live our best lives.
Yeah, that's wise advice. I really want to thank my guest, Dr. Ted Barnett, for being with us today, sharing his insight, his expertise. And I urge you to follow him. The location where you can find him is scrolling across our screen. You can become part of Ted's 15-day program, the Jumpstart Program, or you can just get some really important information on lifestyle medicine. So we urge you to follow him to the best that you can. And I really want to thank the people that joined us today, because without you, we can't do what we do. And we want to thank you for being part of this very active and healthy community. And on behalf of the National Health Association, I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ted. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure, Dr. Sabatino.
You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.